Well, hello everybody, and welcome to the Curious Realms coverage of the official 2025 Lonestar Paracon here in Schertz, Texas. Put on by the Kling brothers. These guys are absolutely amazing. Their events are always awesome. We have with us in this segment Robbin Terry. He is the owner of Ashmore Estates as well as the R Theater. Both of them are well-known haunted locations. Let's start at the beginning here. Was it an interest in the paranormal that brought you to buy the properties, or were the properties just available and something that were of interest to you and you found out?
Well, the first property was the art theater.
Okay.
And I was looking for a place to have an insurance office. And so down on the first floor, and I was like, this is perfect. I've got the lobby and everything. We could set up an office. So we did that, and we were there operating for a couple of years just as our insurance office. And, you know, we hear things.
All right.
You hear voices, you hear sounds, and
sure,
motion lights going off and on. And you don't think a lot about it. At that time, I wasn't into the paranormal. And so I had some friends that wanted to investigate there sometimes. So I said, come on by. Let's do it. You know, see what happens. So they did, and they found all kinds of stuff there at the theater.
Wow. So you were not into the world of the paranormal, things like that. The paranormal came to you through a property that you purchased just out of rote need for your business.
Yeah, back in 1999.
Now, this brings up something really interesting because we've had Margie Kay on the show talking. They've just put out a book, her and another author, about researching properties, specifically insurance, things like that, whenever you go to purchase a home. Was it something insurance-wise because a lot of people don't realize that there are states that are full disclosure. You have to let them know. You have to let a buyer know if it's possibly haunted or if anybody's committed murder there or committed suicide. Is that the case here in Texas as far as insurance goes?
Well, I'm not sure in Texas.
Oh, that's right.
I'm in Illinois.
Yes, you're in Illinois.
But the theater, it was owned by the bank.
Okay.
They repossessed the property, and it sat empty for 3.5 years.
Oh, wow.
You know, nobody wanted it because it just needed a lot of work, and it was a sloped floor and all like that. So they couldn't do a lot with it. So I called them out of the blue one day and said, hey, I'd like to look at this property, and they couldn't get down there fast enough.
I'll bet.
So we looked at it. In fact, they actually cut a 2-inch tree down in front of the door so I could get in.
Oh, wow.
Because it hadn't been seen for a few years.
Oh, wow.
But
interesting.
So we got inside, looked around, and the structure looked at it. So I'm like, heck, let's just buy this because this town I'm in is like 4,000 people. And I made, they came back and I made them an offer of $5,000 on this building.
Wow.
And they turned it down, and which I could understand. But then the bank president called me and said, hey, if you give us $20,000, I'll give you the keys today. So okay. So what the heck? So we went down there and we decided to build the office in the front of it, but it was a mess. I mean, there was no roof. The air conditioning, heating was shot. The power was off. I mean, it was in bad shape.
And how old was the building upon your purchase?
1946.
Okay. So, and had there been any pre-existing history to the building that you came to find out through your time of owning it? Were there reports of hauntings while it was in operation, anything like that?
I had a few people that tell me that they were projectionists there, and they'd heard some sounds up there, heard voices up there once in a while, but nobody really paid much attention to anything. Now, the owner of the place, they lived in a house right next door, and one of the previous owners actually died in the backyard.
Oh, wow.
And like 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning, he died in the flower garden. He was kind of eccentric. He'd be out there weeding his garden at 2 or 3 in the morning and end up dying right out there in the backyard.
Wow. And let's start getting into the occurrences that happened on location. You said that you eventually had some people that you knew that were into the paranormal that came to investigate. What kind of things did they begin to find? What kind of things have you found on property, specifically at Ashmore or at the theater? And then we'll get into Ashmore.
Okay. Well, they came out, I guess it was about 2000, they came out and investigated, and they called me up and they said, hey, we really didn't get a lot of anything, nothing happened at all, so we're going to listen to our audio and see if we can find anything there, but nobody had any personal experiences.
Okay.
And they called me about a week later and said, we need to talk. And so they brought a laptop out, and they played a bunch of EVPs, and they got some crystal clear EVPs out on location.
Wow.
And, they didn't have any personal experiences. Nobody got touched, grabbed, groped, nothing like that. So, but then as we went on, we started getting more people that came out, and it seemed like the spirits in the building were talking like crazy at times.
Wow.
And then we had the strangest occurrence we had. It's probably been 6 or 7 years ago. I had some friends that came over. We were doing what we call a newbie night, where we investigated the building. They never investigated before, and I set up headphones for 10 people, and we went around listening to everything as we got done. And 3 psychics kind of walked to the building, and they came across a well-known serial killer that actually ended up occupying the building, and by the name of John Wayne Gacy.
Oh, wow.
So, yeah, we picked up they picked up on him, and it was kind of weird because it's like there's no reason why he should be here until they started sitting and talking, and they found out that my wife was a roommate of her son, or my wife's roommate in college when she was going to school was killed by Gacy.
Oh, wow.
2 of the guys that were there that night that were helping with the investigation, they handled paperwork that came to the desk from Gacy. And then I bought an armoire that we have upstairs that was owned by the attorney that represented Gacy.
Wow.
And she used to keep paintings of that armoire that he did for her while he was in prison.
Fascinating.
So, yeah, it was kind of bizarre. But and that's why my buddies, Kung Brothers, I was down here. It's been quite a few years ago.
Yeah.
And I was sitting having dinner with Brad Kling. He's like, hey, what's up? What's going on? What's new? And I was telling him, he's like, yeah, we're coming up and doing a story. And so Brad, they drove up from San Antonio to Auburn, Illinois.
Wow.
And did the story of a strange curiosity called Killer Coincidence, and just about the Gacy situation.
Wow, that is really cool, man, to find out that your theater has that kind of connection, and that randomly people there on investigation had connection with him.
Right.
Now, specifically when it comes to things like that, was this an operational movie theater or like public performance theater?
It was a little bit of both.
Okay.
Because they said they utilized the building as much as they could, with things. And they had a stage, and they have country western bands come in.
Okay.
And things like that. Then when it shut down, then there was some guys that bought it that had some bands come in and play.
Okay.
In fact, there was a takeoff of Jerry Garcia's band.
Okay.
That played there, a pretty well-known band.
Yeah.
That played there. But yeah, they did quite a bit of different stuff. They had a few vaudeville type acts back then in the 40s and all that played there.
All right.
So it did a little bit of all.
Yeah, and the reason I ask is because specifically with performance theater, I come from a theater background. I do audio video for a living. It's something that you typically do not find dispassionate people in the theater. The people involved with the theater are very connected with their theater. It's literally a home away from home for them. So the idea of theaters, specifically performance theaters, being inhabited by a Phantom of the Opera, so to speak, is not uncommon whatsoever because of people's connected passion to that space.
Right. Yep. No, and I think that's what's going on here. The owners of the place, they were pretty passionate about it. It was their baby.
Yeah.
The whole family owned it. I mean,
yeah.
It wasn't a matter of one guy bought it. It was just like this was a family operation.
Yeah, precisely. I have a 7-year-old son, and he literally knows how to assemble lighting rigs because he sits there with a wrench and helps me assemble things and helps me assemble tech. So it is a family-oriented thing, especially once you start talking about small town. Right. Things like that. Now, how did you go from the R Theater to Ashmore Estates? Because at that point, you had apparently been involved with the paranormal a little bit like that.
Yep.
Was it something that, because my father lived in a small town for a long time and kind of flipped houses, and it kind of became the fact that as people would leave town, stopping to work for the prison and going to work for another prison, they'd come to him to sell their house. Be like, hey, you're always buying houses, buddy. You want to take a look at mine? So was it the case that when Ashmore Estates came up that somebody heard the fact that you were involved with this, that this was a part-time thing with the theater, and they approached you with it, or did you find it for sale and were just interested?
It was actually a mistake. I found it because there's a guy that was looking. We used to rent a haunted house in the theater, in the basement, and we did it for like 10 years. And
cool.
we were closing it down, and we decided to sell all the props. And I had a guy contact me and said, "Hey, I'm interested in buying some props. If you want to sell them," I'm like, "Yeah, we're going to sell them all." So he's like, "Can I make a time to come over and see it?" So we set it up. He came over and he started going through everything, and he's picking out stuff left and right. And he's like, if you can hold this till next week, just going through the whole thing. And we're marking everything down for him that he wants and hold it for him. And then he tells me, he said, well, he said, I'm sorry that you guys had to come over here, and you come over here on your day off and everything to open up. I'm like, we live upstairs. It's not a big deal. It's like we built a house inside the movie theater.
Yeah.
I said, so we live here. He's like, oh, I said, well, that's kind of unusual. And I said, yeah, it's, not normal. And he's like, any chance I can get a tour of the place? I'm like, yeah, we can do that. So after we got done, we walked up. We're walking through the house and everything. We get upstairs to the second floor. And I asked him, I said, so what are you going to do with all these props? He's like, well, I'm building a haunted house. I'm like, oh, okay, where at? He's like, well, in Indiana. And I said, that's fine. I was like, how'd you hear about it here? He's like, well, I had one actually right now that I own, but I'm going to sell it. And I said, where's that at? Because I'm used to Illinois. He said, we've had them. He's at Ashmore Estates. I'm like, oh, I've been out there before. I said, some of the props you're buying came from Ashmore Estates.
Oh, wow.
So I said, I bought these about a year or so ago from some of them. And so I said, what are you going to do with Ashmore? He's like, I'm going to sell it. And my wife's sitting over going, oh, crap.
Your wife sounds like my wife. She's very keen on what you're into.
Yeah. And so I said, any chance that I can come out and take a look at this place? And he said, yeah, if you're interested. And I said, yeah, I'm really interested. So
cool.
We drove out 2 hours from my house to Ashmore Estates. And we get out there, and he's taking me through, and everything's a disaster. I mean, stuff's thrown everywhere. The place is a mess.
Oh, sure.
And every window is knocked out of the building. There's no power in the building. There's no water in the building. The roof is gone. And I'm like, this is kind of crazy. I'm like, yeah, I'm right back where I was, with the theater. So I said something to him. I said, I'm interested. I said, what do you want? And he said, well, we can talk. And because I told him, I said, as we're headed home, actually, I told my wife, I said, there's something about that building that I got to have it. And she's like, just buy it. And I'm like, really? Because this thing's a mess. And she's like, yeah, you're going to do it, so just do it. But when I walked down the second floor, there was something there that just pretty much it was kind of telling me help our building. And it wasn't about helping spirits in the building, it was helping the building.
Interesting, yeah.
I think that they were content in the building. I think they still are. I think it was just a matter of the building was in bad shape, and they'd like to have it improved. I mean, there's no windows. They had all the windows boarded up except for one.
Yeah.
So you couldn't see out. So I'm thinking, what would you do if you were basically trapped in a house or a building
for all eternity?
Yeah. With one window that everybody in the building tried to look out at times. So that was the first thing we did. We gutted everything. We cleaned it all out. We started putting windows in. 83 openings we filled in the side of the building.
Wow.
With windows, and boarded up the first floor stuff to protect everything.
Yeah.
But it was quite the job, and we had a ton of help from the paranormal community. I mean, they came out in groves.
That is awesome. And I was just about to say, especially in not just smaller communities, but across states, things like that, communities really do rally behind these things. And it's funny because I go to the Fouke Monster Festival in Fouke, Arkansas every year. And one of the things I say regularly is a town either embraces these things or they shun them. And they push them aside. Whenever you go to Fouke, Arkansas for the Fouke Monster Festival, you'll find about 3/4 of the people are amiable and happy you're there and glad that you came to their town for this amazing event, that celebrates a little bit of the rich culture and history of the town and the legend that exists there. And then there's about 1/4 of the town that's like, we're about done with all you looky-loos. We are completely finished with this. We'd be happy if you quit coming 10 years ago.
Right.
How does this sit with the community that Ashmore Estates is in?
I think from talking to people in the past, because we've done a lot of open houses and things like that out there. When I bought the building, I mean, the grass was 3 to 4 foot tall out there, and the place was in shambles.
Yeah.
I mean, it was just like it was worse than it was really when it was a poor farm. When it was a poor farm, it was kind of like a place where people went that nobody wanted to pay attention to.
Yeah.
And so now that we've got it and all the trees are gone and things like that, and the grass was bad, it was the same situation. It was like, don't they tear that old building down there because the place looks like crap and it's like ridiculous. Well, when I bought it, we cleaned it all up, we did everything, and we do open houses out there now, and we've had people from Ashmore, the city, come out and say, I've always wanted to see this place, but I never wanted to go in the way it was. It's like, this is amazing. I can't believe you guys have done this.
That's fantastic.
In fact, the first year we did, one of the girls that helped me out there said, have you looked out the window? I'm like, no. And I said, I'm busy getting things ready. And they said, hey, in case anybody shows up. And she's like, no, you need to go look out the window. And I'm like, why? She said, just go look out the window. So I walked out the window, and there was a line of people about a block long waiting to get inside the building. I'm like,
heck yeah.
Oh, my God, they want to see this place. So
That's just it, because it's one of those, especially when buildings sit for years and years and years, like, not only have you lost a part of the town's history in that way, but there's also all kinds of rumor and speculation that builds up around a property, that kind of stuff. With the theater, especially living there and things like that, did you ever have any experiences yourself in the space?
Oh, at the theater we have, and we've heard voices and everything there. Ashmore, the same thing. I've heard voices.
Wow.
I've seen shadow figures in the building. It's not unusual. I mean, lights going off and on.
Okay.
And it's I think a lot of times when I've been out there working in the building so long, I think spirits in the building, when I walk in, they're like, oh, it's just him.
Yeah.
And so
Word's gotten around?
Yeah, they know. Yeah, exactly. It's traveled through the 3 different floors out there. Like, hey, Robbin's here. But yeah, so I don't think they even bother me out there, because they know that I'm here to work. I'm not there to try to talk to them.
Well, and that brings up a different question, especially with, because I'm sure that you rent these out for like over the weekend to investigative groups, things like that. Have people ever had any, I guess, consternation during an experience? Has anybody ever had like a violent experience, an experience that was horrifying to them, things like that? Or have most of them been pretty benevolent as far as EVP, things like that go?
Everything out there, there's nothing demonic in the building.
Okay.
And when we have Kids Day, we've been doing Kids Day out there since 2016.
Cool.
And so we have 9 years of Kids Days. We do 2 a year. And my grandkids have been out there. I'm not gonna send them to the building if I think it's unsafe.
Exactly.
But yeah, we never had a problem. Is there mean spirits out there? Probably. And people have had some situations, but I don't know when they've said something about that they were scratched or something like that. I don't know what they were doing before they got scratched.
Sure,
if they were provoking or what they were doing.
Or even what their thought pattern was when it happened.
Yep. Or if they ran up against a wall by chance and just thought they got scratched or anything. But I mean, we've had spirits that people have told me they've chased them out of the building, but I don't know. I think a lot of times people take things, they're looking for something to be wrong.
That was something I was about to bring up, because we talk about it regularly on the show. I was having the conversation with an investigator earlier who's even been on TV, all kinds of things, who will be coming on the show later, Shaw. And the idea of how do you prep for an investigation? And are you actively, because going through and reading experiences is awesome. It's great, don't get me wrong. But if that is what you're doing before you go on investigation, then you're kind of polishing the filter through which you're going to be looking at all your data.
Right.
And if you're thinking about demonic things, if that's what your consideration is before you go into a place, period, you may be already manifesting something or charging that atmosphere in that kind of way for the experience instead of going in like a blank slate.
Sure.
Now
there's only been one time out there that I was in May of 2014. I was hooking up electrical up on the 2nd floor, and there's something that just came like, it kept like pushing me out the door. And I always tell people, it's kind of like one of those deals where you go to a party and you're not invited. You kind of feel, look around like, I'm not supposed to be here. And so I finally kind of threw my hands up and was like, okay, if you guys are, you're having something, you got a party going on and I'm not invited, I'll just go ahead and leave.
Yeah,
and
it's your place before it was mine.
Yeah, and I said that as I was walking out the door, and and somebody's like, well, it's probably something evil. I'm like, no, maybe it was somebody protecting me because I was either doing something wrong. And I just talked to a psychic just recently that said that, she's like, have you ever had any experiences here with electrical? I'm like, yeah. And she's like, because they're trying to tell me that you hooked up electrical wrong. And I'm like, okay. And I said, where? And she's like, on the 3rd floor. I'm like, that's where I was that day it happened.
Interesting.
It's been 9 years ago.
Interesting.
I said, but that's where it happened. And they said, there's nothing wrong with the electrical. I know that, but at the same time, that's what it was. So so it kind of fit right in. Like, yeah, maybe that's what it was. They were just afraid that I was doing something wrong.
They didn't see twisted pair wiring was the issue.
Yeah, exactly. It wasn't UL approved or something. I don't know.
Yeah. But the idea of, once again, understanding that feeling when you had it, you didn't see it as something that was warding you to danger or anything like that. Just the fact of, well, I shouldn't be here right now.
Yeah, it was just kind of like, move along.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that's something that we all have to be present and ready for, whether we're on an expedition for experience or not. That's a different level of connection. So good for you for having that, Robbin, because it really is important. It's something that whenever I taught junior high and high school kids spirituality and religion, I taught them beyond anything else, beyond any words in this book, learn to feel for that kite string at the back of your belly button. It'll never steer you wrong. Whatever it says to do, just do it.
Yep.
So when you felt like, hey, I shouldn't be here right now, you just left.
Sure.
Instead of pushing it forward, which sure may have led to something else,
Yeah, the initial thought was to stick around, so I did. And finally, actually, I let it go about an hour and a half, and finally just decided, that's it, because it kept getting a little, not stronger, but it was insistent that you need to go, go.
Yeah.
And it's almost like, it's like, hey, get out of here before this happens.
Interesting.
And so I took off. And
wow.
Haven't had that problem since.
Well, and we've got you for another couple minutes. As we move forward here, how do people get a hold of you to research these locations? Is it something that, have you gathered data from groups that have come to you? Do you have yourself like a log of data of things that have happened on location, things like that?
We have some things at Ashmore where people have, usually people a lot of times don't tell you what's going on or what the experiences they had. And honestly, some of the experiences they had, like photos and things like that,
sure,
I wasn't there, so I don't know that that's what happened.
Yeah.
And so I kind of like, it's kind of cool to have, but at the same time, I'm not going to sit there and endorse it because
you weren't there.
I wasn't there, and I'm always fear, especially in today's world, I'm always afraid somebody's going to fake something and know they faked it, and then give it to me, and I sit there and say, this is great, look what they got. And then they turn around and say, we faked that, and he agreed with it.
You deserve a crisp high five for that, Robbin, sincerely, because it's something that we talk on this show all the time about. It's something that we talk about with Curious Research whenever we are out speaking, is the idea of data. Proper data, not sensationalized data, not sensationalized evidence. Nothing's evidence till it's checked, double-checked, triple-checked, peer-reviewed. Now we can talk about it being evidence. The words I say all the time on the show are, evidence should clear you in court. Never let it be less than that. If you would not give this to your lawyer to say, this will keep me out of prison for life, it's probably not evidence. It's a really good point of data. And for you, even as a property owner, because you could be collecting books of this stuff. You could have pages on your website of pictures that were taken on site, but you don't know that they came from your location for certain. You don't know that somebody like myself, who is a whiz with Photoshop or with video editing, didn't edit something or something like that and falsely present it to you. So the fact that you are maintaining the reputation of these places by doing so, not sensationalizing them, and once again, you could be making buckets of money rain from investigation groups coming to investigate them by having all of these things.
Sure.
You choose to keep it proper and right, and good for you for doing so.
Oh,
really, really good for you, because all too many places want to sensationalize it. And there is a property, one of which is being presented today, that numerous people in the paranormal community were like, this thing, like it came out later that this was horrifying, and that these people faked all kinds of stuff to get people to come over and start investigating the property. And now a lot of groups are having to backwalk the evidence that they got on location, things like that. So good for you for keeping that right and real. That is hugely, hugely important, not only to the investigative community, but to you and to the reputation of these properties. So
we're pretty boring fantastic. When we do the walkthroughs. We'll talk about the history location.
Sure.
We hardly ever talk about the paranormal in the location, because I always tell people, like, they want to know what the hot spots are.
Yeah.
And I'm like, when you came on the property, that's the hot spot. I have no idea where they're at.
Yeah.
I'm not sensitive.
They move. The ghost
exactly.
doesn't just hang out in one place waiting for you all day.
And we can't make them tap dance.
Yeah.
And so I tell them, I said, just enjoy the building and let it come to you.
If you could make them tap dance, it'd be a whole different ticket price.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. It's like, we're going to charge a lot more.
That's kind of what I tell people in the investigative field. Like, I belong to a lot of social media groups, and I see a lot of the same people post like 3 times a week in a UFO group about, here's a video I took of my, and it's like, if you can schedule it on a Wednesday night, why don't you have tickets?
Right.
I'm just curious. Why aren't there tickets to the viewing platform in your backyard if this happens like 3-4 nights a week? It's no longer paranormal. It seems pretty normal and scheduled.
Sure.
So the fact that, once again, you are keeping things on the real with this and not sensationalizing things, absolutely awesome.
No, we keep things as honest as possibly ever can.
Absolutely. I want to thank you so much for your time today. It is becoming a very busy day as we sat here.
Yeah,
literally, it has gotten very busy. So I'm going to let you go back to your table. Before we let you go, let everybody know where they can go to find out more about the R Theater and where they can go to find out more about Ashmore Estates, Robbin.
Okay, the R Theater, we are no longer doing investigations there.
Okay.
I've had a lot of heart issues when people have done investigations there, so we shut it down.
All right.
And we're not doing it anymore.
Fair enough.
And Ashmore Estates is ashmoreestates.net, or you can check our Ashmore Estates on our Facebook page, or you can give us a call at 217-899-9978, and Ashley will be helping to help you out there.
All right. Well, thank you so much.
Hey,
I greatly appreciate it. Absolutely. While you are online, checking out everything from Ashmore Estates and Robbin Terry, make sure to stop on by Curious Realm. Curious Realm is where you can like, follow, subscribe. That's where you can find all of our interviews from events like this, as well as other events like MUFON Symposium, events all over the country. We will be right back after this quick break with our continuing coverage of Lonestar Paracon right here in Schertz, Texas. Right after this, folks. The key to good science is good research. At the heart of good research is a good data set. With the field observation and encounter log from Curious Research, you can easily keep track of your investigative information all in one place, making it easier to review cases and readily see comparisons and contrasts between them. Whether out in the woods squatching, in a back room gathering EVPs, or using high-tech gear to track UFO, UAP activity, this easy-to-carry, pocket-sized scientific data log is the perfect companion for any field researcher. You can find your copy of the Curious Research Field Observation and Encounter Log at Amazon.com or visit the official Curious Realm store at curiousrealm.com/store to reserve your copy for yourself, your family, or a mind that you want to open. That website again is curiousrealm.com/store.